Now moving on to political topics, the Emirati format. Yesterday in Abu Dhabi, the first round of negotiations with the Russians concluded. The next round is expected exactly 1 week from now. Today, the Western press is full of publications. What should we expect next? What are the biggest challenges? Let's ask our special correspondent in the United States, Dmytro Anapchenko, about this. He is joining us live from the American Congress. Dmytro, breathe. What are the forecasts and expectations?
Well, first of all, the forecast and expectations regarding the timing are more or less clear here. All the negotiating teams are now taking a week to once again coordinate their positions in their respective capitals, possibly adjust them, and then gather again in a week in the United Arab Emirates in Abu Dhabi. Next. As for the format, I know there were a lot of questions about why Moscow sent this particular negotiating team, and maybe you've seen them too. There were even theories that perhaps Moscow is finally ready to negotiate, since instead of the usual propagandists like Medinsky, who would once again just talk about the origins of the conflict, this time there were military officials, including the head of Russian military intelligence, Igor Kostyukov. However, American diplomatic sources explain this situation with several reasons. And first of all, it's because Budanov is now part of the Ukrainian delegation, so Moscow had to send someone who would be his counterpart, meaning an official with a corresponding position. American diplomats say that the first round, the one in Abu Dhabi that just recently concluded, was deliberately organized in a mixed format, in the format of subgroups, where it was necessary to discuss, among other things, the technical details of a possible demarcation in Donbass. However, I emphasize that the Russian negotiating team present did not have any mandate to make promises or concessions. Their role was purely technical, to discuss matters and then, as they say, pass everything off the chain to the Kremlin so that decisions could be made there. And American diplomats also explained what sets these Emirati discussions apart, the absence of formal frameworks. In other words, negotiators from different sides, Ukrainian, American, and, well, Russian, had the opportunity to communicate without any time constraints or formal boundaries. The negotiations were, in part, direct between Ukrainians and Russians. That's the first point. Partly, the Americans moderated these talks, and partly only some members of the delegation could meet with part of the other delegation, while others would join later. In other words, this lack of formalities, this absence of any kind of protocol restrictions, according to the American side, is supposed to facilitate the negotiation process. As for the results of the first round, to be honest with you, the assessments are quite varied. Well, on the one hand, the American official who spoke to the press described the negotiations, I'll quote here, as productive. And I think you've noticed this too. Lately in Washington, it's very common when talking about negotiations to say that we're close, that everything will be resolved any moment now. Well, just remember that very sweet speech by Vitkov in Davos. It was enough to listen to him. If you believed only him, you'd get the impression that, well, the war would literally end tomorrow. And I actually asked my American diplomatic sources, why is it like this? Why this particular rhetoric? And I heard that here, they believe that by doing so, they motivate the parties to reach agreements faster when they publicly say that everything is fine, that we're moving toward a result, instead of focusing on the differences. Well, of course there are differences, and of course there are problems. At the same time, off camera, a high-ranking official from the American administration told me that, in reality, things are not so simple because of the Russians' tough stance on Donbass. They say that, in principle, the parties have preliminarily agreed to the format currently proposed by the Americans, that is, the creation of a free economic zone, or as it is now called, a duty-free zone, which they want to establish in the areas of Donbass from which troops will be withdrawn. But it is still difficult to reach an agreement on where the borders of this zone should be. So, will Moscow agree to withdraw from the current front line by the same distance as Ukraine? This is Kyiv's proposal. Kyiv is insisting on this very firmly. Or will they still defend and continue to defend their own vision, their own version? And there's also the question of how, when, and in what way Russia will agree to leave the territories of Kharkiv, Sumy, Dnipropetrovsk, and Mykolaiv regions, if a solution is eventually found for Donbass. And there's also a huge question regarding the Kherson region, because that's a territory the Russians consider their land corridor to Crimea, and they see it as a strategic area. So even now, when President Zelensky said that there's one issue we still can't agree on, and that's the territorial issue, the president spoke about this directly in Davos. So So it's clear that this issue and this territorial uncertainty directly affect both the negotiations and what's happening now, including in Abu Dhabi. Because as long as there are no answers regarding the territories, you probably also noticed that Russia constantly refers to the so-called spirit of Anchorage and keeps saying that we need to be guided by the results of those negotiations. What does that mean? I tried to look into it for you, tried to explain it to you. Well, what I hear from my American interlocutors is that, according to internal rumors here in the corridors of American power, supposedly during the negotiations in Alaska, Putin actually told Trump that he would like to gain control over the entire Donbass. And apparently, the American president did not publicly object. The Russian side perceives this as a kind of tacit agreement. It's not a fact that such an agreement exists, but that's how it's seen in the Kremlin. Well, they're probably taking wishful thinking for reality. And right now, this message, the so-called spirit of Anchorage, the Anchorage agreements, is being constantly exploited. And further, if we talk about what is happening, the issue of monitoring the ceasefire remains unresolved. At the moment, there's even the idea that two missions might be needed, a monitoring mission and a so-called peacekeeping mission. That is, Moscow does not agree to the deployment of international forces, which the Allies are talking about, along the line of demarcation. In any case, the process is moving forward. In any case, let's be honest, the process isn't an easy one. However, in a week, exactly in a week, two negotiating teams, actually now three negotiating teams, are supposed to meet again in the same place, in the United Arab Emirates in Abu Dhabi. Alexei, colleagues.
Dmitro, thank you very much. With the latest news from Washington was our special correspondent, Dmitro Anapchinto. Thank you, colleague.
The current president of the United States of America, Donald Trump, firmly maintains the belief that the leaders of Ukraine and Russia, Volodymyr Zelensky and Vladimir Putin, are ready to negotiate a comprehensive peace agreement to finally end the war. In the past, there were specific times when Putin simply didn't want to make a deal. Similarly, there were other times when Zelensky didn't want to make a deal either, and those were kind of opposite times. Now, however, I think both of these leaders truly want to make a deal, but we will have to wait and see what happens. According to the head of the White House, during a meeting in Davos, Volodymyr Zelensky confirmed to him that he wants to reach an agreement. President Zelensky came and said that he really wants to make a deal, because I wasn't completely sure at first. I think he definitely should want to make a deal. It's very hard. It's really incredibly hard for all the Ukrainian people. I'll tell you that right now, Donald Trump said. U.S. President Donald Trump gave a positive assessment of Russian leader Vladimir Putin's willingness to contribute $1 billion for participation in the Peace Council. Vladimir Putin put forward a proposal to utilize Russian assets that are currently held and frozen within the United States for this specific purpose. At the same time, Donald Trump sat aboard his private plane while engaging in a conversation with a group of journalists. Joining the Peace Council, an organization whose creation was entirely my own idea, will necessitate a substantial financial contribution of $1 billion from each individual country that joins. Former President Donald Trump was questioned during an interview whether he supports Vladimir Putin's desire to pay this contribution using the funds that are frozen within the United States. And Donald Trump gave a rather ambiguous answer. Vladimir Putin is going to join the Peace Council and will make a significant contribution of $1 billion. And using his own money. I mean, if he truly uses his own money, that would be absolutely wonderful, Trump stated in his remarks. It should be noted that earlier, Vladimir Putin announced that he would transfer $1 billion from assets frozen in the U.S., which were confiscated as punishment for Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022, to the Peace Council created by Donald Trump specifically for Gaza. This was reported by the publication Die Welt. Even before we clarify the issues of participation in the Peace Council and its work, given Russia's special relationship with the Palestinian people, I believe that we could transfer $1 billion from Russian assets frozen under the previous U.S. administration to the Peace Council, Putin said at a meeting with Russia's Security Council. Simultaneously, American President Donald Trump publicly expressed admiration for how Ukrainians are enduring life without any heating due to the constant attacks by the Russian army. It's very hard, really hard for people in Ukraine. The way they live without heat when it's 20 degrees below zero outside? You know, it's very cold there. For the most part, Ukraine's climate is colder than Canada's, the US president commented. According to him, he is very impressed by what Ukrainians are doing to survive. At the same time, Donald Trump emphasized that it shouldn't be this way. They live without feet. I asked them, how do you do it? And they gave me an answer. It's truly impressive how they live, what they do to survive. But people shouldn't have to live like this, said the head of the White House. Donald Trump also commented on the trilateral technical level meeting in the UAE, which is scheduled to take place today, Friday. In his personal view, any meeting is already a very good thing. If you fail to sit down and meet face to face, then absolutely nothing will ever occur. I mean, for the first 3 years, no one met at all. Under the administration of President Biden, no one met. And you know, if you do not meet together, then nothing happens, the American president noted during his remarks. As is known, the presidents of the United States and Ukraine met on the sidelines of the World Economic Forum in Davos yesterday, Thursday. Trump told reporters that the meeting was good. Vladimir Zelensky, in turn, called the meeting difficult, but also good. According to him, the discussion was about protecting Ukrainian airspace and agreements on a peaceful settlement. And what do you think about the agreements? Do you think the leaders will actually manage to reach an agreement? Write your thoughts in the comments, and we will definitely read them. That is all for now. Please share your thoughts in the comments below. Leave a like if you liked it, and we will see you again next time.